What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today we need to take a little bit of a look at another winning Digimon deck list. We're going to be talking yellow today, and we're going to be talking about WarGreymon. You see, that Yellow WarGreymon is starting to see a lot of play over in Japan, and it is starting to see a lot of success. Shout out to Ensan Gaming for sharing these lists as always. The list did originate from the lovely folks over at Tsutaya_BP, a Japanese gaming shop over on Twitter. And what we basically got here is a yellow deck that looks kind of cool and has basically been entirely made because of BT4, Great Legend. Make no mistake about it, when BT4 drops, it's a fourth set in Japan, the third set over here, because we amalgamated 3 sets into Booster 1.0 and Booster 1.5. Yellow is getting a whole bunch better. Now, we should probably start off, as we tend to do, with the TAMER here, and we see what we see so often. It is a 4-1 split. So we've got 4 copies of the Uppermon here. This is one that came around in BT3. When you attack, if your security is 3 or less, you draw a card. No, it doesn't do anything if you've got 4 or more security. Yes, that's a little bit sad, but hopefully throughout the game it will draw you a couple extra cards, and that's kind of the point. We've also got Koromon here. When you attack once during your turn, if your security is 3 or less, one of your opponents gets minus 1,000 power. Now, I showed you a yellow deck the other day, Shine Greymon deck, and these were, I believe, the Digitamer we used there. These are generally the 2 Digitamer that see play in yellow decks. You can mix up the orders, but generally draw is so strong that 4 Uppermon is a pretty good idea. Moving over into the level 3s here, we've got ourselves a full playset of Tsukaimon. And Tsukaimon is one of those standard things that we see time and time again. It's a 2 cost to play normally. It's not a particularly great card. It's not a particularly amazing card. It is very much just it is cheap to play normally kind of card. And honestly, that's good enough. It's not the only level 3 we play, of course. We've also got 3 copies of Labramon here. Now, this is the Labramon that came around in BT3. And when you attack, one of your opponent's Digimon loses 1,000 power for the turn. So again, you've got the combo going on there with your Koromon. We've got ourselves 3 copies of Salamon here. Not the same Salamon, obviously, that would be a little bit weird. And this one isn't so cheap to play normally, but it is still cheap, or free in fact, to Digivolve. But when it's destroyed, if your security is 3 or less, you recover 1. So, I mean, ideally here, you get a couple of these down on the board. If your security gets too low, i.e. when it gets down to 3, you just throw a Salamon at your opponent's security. You go down inevitably, but you take out one of their security while recovering one of your own. That sounds like a pretty good deal to me, honestly. Now, we have 3 copies of Patamon here. Now, this was a Patamon that originally came around in the starter deck. When one of your opponent's Digimon, it's an inheritable skill, obviously, is destroyed by having its power lowered to 0, gain a memory. Cool. That sounds good to me, honestly. Yeah, fine, it's just 1 memory, but 1 memory can make all the difference. And I've already shown you a couple of cards that will reduce your opponent's Digimon's power. Don't worry, there are others. And then we've got a couple of copies of Bushi-Agumon. Now, Bushi-Agumon is an expensive Digimon to play. It is a 5 cost, and you can Digivolve it for free, but you don't really want to, because it's got haste. Haste says that you can attack the turn you play it, and it does have to be played, not Digivolved. But you pay the 5 to play it, and then you can attack with it right now. That sounds pretty good to me. It can be used as a standard, ordinary, everyday, run-of-the-mill level 3 that you just Digivolve up through. That'll work, but it's not the main reason you play this, ladies and gentlemen. Not even a little bit. Now, there is another level 3 here, but it's not necessarily a fair comparison with the other level 3s, because it's Loosemon. Now, Loosemon cannot Digivolve from a Digitamer, and it's a 13 cost Digimon, which is horrendous, although we are talking 10,000 power, which is good. But if you've got 10 or more cards in your trash, you can play it as an 8 cost. Now, we're not playing much milling in this deck, but that's alright. You're still going to be able to play it at some point. And then when you do play it, you recover 1. Now, this is huge because it doesn't matter what you've got in terms of security. You know, I've already shown you Salamon here, which will, when deleted, recover 1 if you've got 3 or less. This will always just recover 1. But it's not the first recovery card I've shown you in this deck. And it's not the last recovery card I'm going to show you in this deck. There's a lot of recovery going on, and also a 5-cost 10,000 power Digimon that recovers 1 when you play it. Yeah, fine, you got to wait till there's 10 cards in your trash. It'll be worth it. Now, moving over into the level 4s, we've got Unimon here, and we see quite a lot of Unimon in yellow decks. It's a blocker. It really is as simple as that. It's not particularly cheap. It's not particularly powerful. And if you attack with it, you lose 2 memory, which sucks. But it's got blocker. Your opponent attacks, you can suspend it to block the attack. And you're probably going to want to. It's a very good card. Oh, but if you want a better blocker, or at least a cheaper, easier to get into play blocker, how about Pitamon? Pitamon comes in here as a 1-cost to Digivolve blocker. Yes, fine, it's 1 more to play normally and has 1,000 less power, but you're probably going to Digivolve a level 3 into this, at which point you're going to have a blocker that's just sitting out there. And now we don't have 4 blockers available to play. Now we have 8 blockers available to play. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a very different thing indeed. We're starting to see this with yellow decks that they are playing 4 of each of these. And can you really blame them? They're pretty gosh darn good. But there is actually a non-blocker we play here as well. I should mention there's only 2 copies of Unimon in the deck. You can have 8 blockers. This particular deck chooses to go for 6. And obviously you play 4 of the Pitamon because it's cheaper to Digivolve. The other level 4 is the one we tend to see in a lot of yellow decks at the moment. It's Teruimon. I don't know how to pronounce that one. All I know is it's a 1-cost to Digivolve level 4. And that basically tells you all you need to know about it. It's no more complicated than that. We want to Digivolve up as fast as we can. Yeah, sure, we'd like to have a blocker. That would be awesome. But you don't need a blocker. You just sometimes need to get through your level 4, and this will do it very nicely indeed. Moving over into level 5s, we become quite the fan of Angel Woman. That is to say, there are 2 different Angel Women that we are actually playing here. I mean, who doesn't love Angel Woman? She does seem pretty popular. We've got the one that originally came out. We've actually had it for a little while now. But it is the one that did originally come out in the starter deck. When you Digivolve, if you've got 3 security or less, you recover 1. But bearing in mind, I've already told you about the Salamon, that when it's deleted, if you've got 3 or lower security, you get to recover 1. We're actually building in a decent amount of recovery here, which is really kind of cool. Now, there are a couple copies of another Angel Woman here. It's the one from BT3. When you Digivolve, one of your opponent's Digimon gets security attack -2 until the end of your opponent's next turn. So the theory here is fairly simple. If your opponent's building up extra security attacks and you don't have a blocker on board, this will stop them. Obviously, if they do have a blocker on board, you can just block them. But also, you can just turn off their attacker. So if they've got a Digimon that is going to attack multiple times during the turn, you just use this, and then all of a sudden your opponent can attack multiple times. They just won't get rid of any security when they do, which seems like a pretty good advantage to you. Now, there is actually an inheritable skill here as well that we should probably have a quick chat about. And that is that when you're attacking, if your security is 3 or less, you can play a level 3 or lower yellow Digimon from your hand without paying the cost. The or less is future-proofing here. The only less we've got at the moment is TAMER, DIGI-EGG, that you cannot play from your hand anyway. But it's phrased like that so that maybe in the future there will be, and it will be covered under this skill. It's there for Loosemon. And again, it's another one of those skills like we keep seeing in this deck. If your security is 3 or lower, but that's fine. I'm totally alright with that, because it lets you play Loosemon without paying for it, and without having to have 10 cards in your trash, and that sounds pretty good to me. The other one we see here is another one of these new ones. It's WarGreymon. Now, it's got Digiburst 2, which is to say you've got to trash 2 Digivolution sources to use a skill, and it is worth bearing in mind, as a level 5, you will only ever have 3 Digivolution sources, the level 2, the level 3, the level 4. So that means that you're only ever going to use this once. But you do get to lower one of your opponent's Digimon by 4,000 power. We've seen a few skills that do this, plus of course we've got the Patamon that will allow you to gain a memory when you lower it to 0, so seems thematically appropriate, and of course it's the kind of thing we tend to see. Now moving over into the level 6s, we've got a little bit of a mix, but I did sell this as a WarGreymon deck to begin with, so I don't know. Seems like that might be a nice place to start. Plus, of course, it is worth pointing out here that this is the most populous of the level 6s in the deck. Now, Yellow WarGreymon here, when you attack, you may put the top card from your security stack to your hand, unsuspend this Digimon, and one of your opponent's Digimon loses 6,000 power. And this is an awkward card, and hopefully by now you're starting to see that the entire deck has basically been building towards this card. You see, WarGreymon's skill is phenomenal. Unsuspending yourself so you can attack again, phenomenal. Lowering one of your opponent's Digimon's power by 6,000, phenomenal. Adding a security card from your stack to your hand is good because it gives you an extra card in hand, more options, etc. Yay! But, yeah. The biggest issue here is that when you pick up a security card, you've got one fewer security, and when you run out of security, your opponent attacks and wins the game. Yowza. But I've shown you Salamon, and I've shown you Loosemon, and I've shown you Angel Woman. And these can essentially replace your security, especially if you've got 4 security, lower it down to 3 with WarGreymon, but then throw Salamon at your opponent's stack or a Wrestling Digimon or whatever and immediately recover it again. And we've got enough Digimon here that can recover those cards and, recover in terms of the name and also recover literally. You are getting rid of them, but then you're recovering them, so it will probably be okay. And given that this did go and win a tournament, and it's not the first WarGreymon Yellow deck I've seen win a tournament, this seems fair to probably suggest it might be quite good. Now, in terms of other level 6s, we've got one that does combo very nicely with a lot of what we've seen so far. It's Angemon. When you Digivolve, one of your opponent's Digimon loses 8,000 power for the turn. Yep. We've already seen a bunch of lowering power, and we've seen the Patamon that lets you gain memory when you lower it to 0. This is a card that it takes all that lowering that we've seen and we've done, and it turns it up to 11 and really goes a bit nuts. Outside of that, it's not a particularly good card. It's an 8,000 power, level 6, but it's got a great Digivolve skill, so we are going to allow it. We've also got Magnadramon here. Now, Magnadramon is another card that the stats of which don't look great. It's got 10,000 power. But Magnadramon is a card that in this particular build is just perfect. When you play it, and that is play, not Digivolve, so you've got to pay the full 11. If your security is 3 or less, you recover 2. Now again, your security's got to be 3 or less, and it's an 11 cost to play normally. This is not an easy card to just play on a whim. You've got to time it, you've got to do it properly. But when you do, it is flat out over the top phenomenal, and it fits with all that other recovery. If your opponent cannot get you from 3 down to 0 quickly, this is a deck that can recover many security cards very quickly. But it's also got something whereby when you attack, you may play a level 3 Yellow Digimon from your hand without paying its cost. Loosemon. Like, there are other level 3s here, but Loosemon. You're going for Loosemon here. Because you see, as much as waiting till you've got 10 cards in your trash is good, and will work sometimes, it can be a little bit slow. This accelerates it very nicely indeed. If you weren't playing so much recovery / WarGreymon, it might not be as good. If you weren't playing Loosemon, it might not be as good. But you are, in both circumstances, doing them things, so it becomes a very good card indeed. And of course, nowadays we do have a level 7 that does Digivolve from Yellow, so we are playing it. It's Chaosmon. Of course it is. The Valderan version, because a regular cannot Digivolve from Yellow. And when you Digivolve, you twice get to lower one of your opponent's Digimon by 7,000 power. Yeah, it's more lowering. I mean, this and Slash Angemon together can really go nuts lowering power. Plus, you've got all the little lowering that we've seen previously as well. And this is just awesome. Oh yeah, and when you get deleted, you gain free memory just in case it wasn't good enough. I mean, you're literally Digivolving it for 6, but when you get deleted, you get 3 of them back. And you're lowering either 7,000 from 2 Digimon or 14,000 from 1. And if you've got a Digimon that's evolved from Patamon, you're probably getting 1 memory straight back anyway. And this becomes kind of a no-brainer. It's a pretty gosh darned good card. Plus, you know, if you've got something like Slash Angemon, you Digivolve up into it, you get the skill, yay. But then you've got this really uninspiring level 6. That's when you Digivolve it up. Whereas with WarGreymon, you're probably going to be okay leaving it as WarGreymon. No option cards here, but we do have 4 Tamers, so we should probably have a chat about them. I say we've got 4 Tamers. It is 4 copies of the same 4-cost TK Takaishi. On your turn, if you've got 2 or less memory, you set your memory to free, i.e. you will always start your turn with free memory, which is frankly a good thing. It's a nice little card to have. Better when it comes out as a security card, obviously, because then you don't have to pay for it. But it's also got a skill whereby when you play it, you look at your security, grab a card from it, and if it's yellow, you recover 1. Now remember, this isn't real recovery. What you're doing is picking up a security card and then replacing it, but it lets you search your security cards and pick one that you like, and as long as you take a yellow, you don't actually lose any cards. So this sounds pretty gosh darn good to me. Worth bearing in mind, this is an entirely yellow deck other than Chaosmon, so you should be okay there. I like this deck. I like how weird WarGreymon is. I love the ridiculous amount of recovery. We were promised recovery from the starter deck. You know, I showed you a Angel Woman from the starter deck here that has recovery, and it feels like now yellow decks are finally actually starting to work with recovery. But you've also got all the power lowering and so many other tricks. You'll notice so many of these cards. Your WarGreymon, your Loosemon, your WarGrowlmon, your Chaosmon, your Bushy-Agamon. So many of these cards have come from BT4. This really is the set that has made yellow into a really good viable option moving forward. But as always, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about this. I want to know how good you think this deck is, so let me know in the comment section, would ya? Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the Wossy. That's where we talk Digimon and a whole bunch of other card games. And do please consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wossy Plays.